to Schlatt. I have a toxic relationship with what I love doing. I'm a content creator similar to you, except I make comics. I actually amassed a sizable following and love making what I do. I've been making comics since middle school and have continued making them for 5 years to only now receive a following this year. These 5 years of experience helps me to understand what sort of people hold me back and what to avoid when it comes to playing my cards. My issue is that I want to take a hiatus to better understand myself and to take some time to improve my writing and other skills in general, but I keep making comics, not out of pity or for feeling bad for my fans, but out of complete impulse. I'm aware that if I keep making comics at the rate I do, I will have burnout. I've never been in a relationship. Thanks for saying that. But I also heavily relate to Smokey Robinson's songs where he's talking about a girl, but instead of a girl, it's comics. It feels like a toxic relationship, except I can say from the bottom of my heart that I'm still having a positive experience. How am I able to leave doing something I love so I don't end up hating it? Now that was an email sent July 27th of 2020 to none other than Schlatt himself on his weekly Slap email account that he has. Basically, he'd go through his email, find one with a good title to it, read it, and maybe he'd use it for a video. By all means, he could have read that email, I wouldn't know, but I'm going to assume he hasn't. I mean, I haven't read that email since I sent it to him however long ago, 4 years ago. And if I knew it was going to be in a video, not his video, but one of my videos 4 years later, I would have taken some time to reevaluate some things I said. But for some context of what I'm even talking about in that email, I used to make webcomics. Back in 2020, I used to make them. But for these last 4 years, I've been making videos and nothing but. Because by 2020, I was watching people succeed on this platform, and they were people like me that were succeeding, not people older than me. And I felt like it was time. I had to kick myself into a new gear and try to make videos again. But there were a lot of things holding me back. I had a lot of fears, one of which being that I would have to give up something in pursuit of what I thought would be greener pastures. Fast forward 4 years later, and what do you know, I don't make comics anymore, needless to say. But what I thought was going to be a greener pasture at first turned out to be a lot more rocky of a road than I thought. What I'm saying is that I'm 21, and compared to where Schlatt was at 21, well, I'm kind of a late bloomer. I don't know. What do you think I've done?
But if we were to battle, I've already won.
Now, I don't know what prompted me to make that email 4 years ago, but I guess I saw what Schlatt was doing, and it was something I wanted to do, so if I were to ask advice from anyone, he was the guy to ask advice to. I wanted to be a YouTuber growing up. I still want to be a YouTuber. Well, I guess I'm kind of a YouTuber, but I don't know, it just doesn't have the same weight when you don't have 100,000 or a livelihood from it. But I have some good news, everybody. We achieved 911 subscribers in the last 28 days. Round of applause, round of applause. This is a continuation of an old video, so I gotta figure out where was I at last time. Oh wait, I remember. The rest of 2019 was very smooth sailing for Schlatt. He joined some other SMPs, kept live streaming, doing what he was doing. The most risky thing he did was trying other games that weren't Minecraft on his channel, which worked to varying degrees, and at least in retrospect it's worked better than his Minecraft videos. They're much more viewed than his Minecraft videos. He was also on some podcasts at the time, like the Goopcast, which was a podcast hosted again by C-Scoop, real name Cooper, and Call Me Carson, real name Carson. The connections he was making to these YouTubers would eventually become something bigger in due time though, but we'll get to that. I'll get to it, you won't. You'll sit down and watch. Every once in a while, especially in the context of gaming on YouTube, there will eventually be the idea of a group of people getting together and making content together. You already play games and record podcasts with these people on a regular basis, so why not have something a little more organized for our own benefit? Sometimes these groups would move into a house with each other with the intent of collaboration being easier to commit to and for the potential of real life content like vlogs to be recorded. Now, some of these groups succeed more than others. You can either die a team crafted or live long enough to see yourself become the sidemen. Near the end of 2019, Schlatt, along with Charlie of Slimesicle fame and Ted Nivison, were invited to be part of a group that consisted of C-Scoop, real name Cooper, Call Me Carson, real name Carvis, as well as Travs, real name Travis, and Hugbox, real name Noah. And with their powers combined, as well as a few name changes, they came up with Lunch Club. They did gaming content together, which wasn't anything new, but they also got together in real life at the heart of LA to make some quality content. They also had a podcast. The easiest comparison you can make at the the time was another group called the Misfits that they commonly collaborated with. Once they went to Australia to meet their brother group and record some stuff over there, though I'm not sure any of it saw the light of day on their channel except their last video, because yes, Lunch Club ended. Between their first video on January 25th and their last video on November 11th, Lunch Club lasted about 10.5 months. Doing the math, this was in 2020 and there was this virus going around. I don't know, it had people staying inside or whatever. So realistically, in the public eye at least, Lunch Club lasted about 5 months. I know you're thinking January to March is only 2 months in between, but realistically, the Lunch Club podcast went on for an extra couple months before shutting down on its own accord. Ah yes, a once promising idea on paper that was shot down due to circumstances beyond their control. And you know what, if I can talk about Lunch Club in a more candid sense, I only watched it for Schlatt. I didn't care about anyone else. Here's something you have to remember. If you have nostalgia for the Lunch Club, it's definitely not because these guys were entertaining. It's probably something a lot more subconscious. And I don't mean that in a mean way. I just mean it in the sense that these guys were all like 20. And I'll just say they didn't have enough training to be at the peak of their powers.
I'm done?
In your seat, you can sit and wait.
The rest of them kind of suck on camera though.
Sit and wait.
They're kind of not good.
Again, the reason I watched Schlatt was because I connected to him the most as a creator at the time in terms of what he was doing, because he was someone who was putting in the work I wanted to see from a YouTuber that wasn't me.
I tell the jokes.
Seeing him have that in action but also in real life was something very interesting to me, so when I watched the Lunch Club, I only watched it for him. I'm just gonna be honest, everyone else was just like an annoying high school stereotype to me. Call Me Carson and Slimesicle were like annoying band kids, Ted Nivison was a theater kid, which I still have flashbacks from, and the rest of them were stoners. But yeah, when I was watching Lunch Club, I was just watching it for this one guy just to see what he would do. I think that was probably the point of Lunch Club though, was to get someone like me who only watched one of these creators and integrate all of these audiences together. But anyways, a virus started going around and Lunch Club ended around the same time. Coincidence? Maybe, but really it only affected the group. I mean, these were YouTubers, they were already recording in their rooms anyways, so it didn't affect them that much. I mean, Schlatt was already making videos where he sat in his room playing video games. The only difference between someone like Schlatt and people who were pigeonholed into being inside all day were that they had nothing better to do than to watch someone like Schlatt. This was also a great time to live stream, which Schlatt was no longer doing. J Schlatt Live was no longer live. Although Schlatt streamed, he was ultimately a YouTuber at heart and opted for entertainment over intimacy with his viewers. He felt like he was on thin ice all the time and scared of being banned at all for the slightest mistake made, or for the fact that at this point all he was known for on Twitch was being a Minecraft streamer, which was a contrast to the fans he had on YouTube that would watch his other videos. But oh, if you go to Twitch and stream anything else that isn't Minecraft, well guess what, no one watches because they're like actual teenagers or children and they only want to watch one thing. It was a downward spiral of burnout that needed to be resolved sooner than later, and what better way to resolve it than to just leave it all behind, to not stream anymore. As much as people loved it when Schlatt streamed, Schlatt did not, and this time, he chose himself. During this absence of a live presence, his channel consisted of the aforementioned Wii games along with gameplay of Five Nights at Freddy's for some reason, and Sub Rosa, a game he originally played on his old channel. While this was all happening, and while Schlatt would try to branch away from Minecraft out of fatigue for playing it all the fucking time, Minecraft was more popular than it's ever been through the way it was able to cultivate communities on YouTube. For everything to make sense, let me talk about Minecraft for a second. In November, a YouTuber, you might have heard of him, Wilbur Soot. I'm sorry. Anyways, Wilbur Soot, who had collaborated with J Schlatt on a live stream here and there, also joined SMP Live, was making his own SMP, his own Minecraft server in collaboration with someone named Chipple Dipple. If SMP Live was going to die, then this game needed a hero. Many familiar faces from SMP Live would join this server, as well as new faces like Technoblade, who created an empire in the Antarctic. Also in this server was a baby-faced, baby-voiced, high-pitched 15-year-old British thing walking around called Tommy Innit. He was an excessively nervous, bitchless entity on the cusp of achieving his own 100,000 subscribers. And he was a small fry hanging around with the big dogs like Captain Sparkles and Technoblade, who got the biggest surge of attention in his YouTube career through winning 5 of the 4 weeks of Minecraft Monday Monday, but that fizzled out, who cares? Regardless, Technoblade needed something else to do, and what better to do than interact with other YouTubers? It seemed to work so damn well on Minecraft Monday. Here's the strange thing about Tommy Innit though. He was able to become the amalgamation of everything he enjoyed on YouTube, becoming a much more refined internet personality at a younger age. Younger than anyone he grew up watching. His childhood hero isn't Captain Sparkles or Ant Venom or Sky Does Minecraft. His childhood hero was this one YouTuber, you might have heard of him, called Schlatt. This is a very weird feeling. Okay, I know, it's very heartwarming and touching that you've helped inspire creators to be the best version of themselves they could be, but with that also heeds a warning. The attention this channel got would naturally expand his audience, cause it to even shift some. If more people knew about him, then more people would want to be like him. I think that's a simple equation, and if someone can learn from him the same way he learned from his heroes, then it begs the question. If people could be just like him and optimize the style he worked all his life to create, then what was stopping people from watching them instead of him? This is a common phenomenon known as imposter syndrome, which is specifically when a 13-year-old draws perfect anatomy as you struggle to draw a face that not only makes you want to gouge your eyes out, but the eyes you tried to draw. I'm exaggerating, but Schlatt is a student of YouTube that is keenly aware of how fast YouTube's environment can change. The videos he made in 2018 no longer had a place for who he is only a year later. Now he makes gaming videos that maximize entertainment over sentiment. Not to say people still didn't like that sort of content. Heck, the Weekly Slap had its own cult following, but the environment of YouTube is all too unpredictable, and what works today could be gone tomorrow. No one knows this better than the guy who had his channel terminated at random.
I liked when YouTube shut my channel down.
Schlatt was in a weird stage in his life. By November of 2019, he was at 500,000 subscribers. And at this rate, 1 million subscribers was still an uncertainty. Something bad could happen at any second. And Schlatt knew YouTube enough that even the smallest mistakes could lead to irreversible consequence. But day by day, as his sub count grew, it became less a matter of if and more a matter of when. Speaking of the Weekly Slap, well, it was no longer weekly. There were multiple month-long gaps between uploads, going as long as 2 months apart, but when he came back in September, he eventually started focusing on his inbox series instead of the biographical updates of his life. This eventually being the only thing he would upload on his channel for a long time. More people watched them, and by watching them, they felt a deeper connection to Schlatt than if he just talked about himself. He started becoming a mentor to those that seeked it out. If Schlatt Live was to entertain, then the Weekly Slap was meant to inspire. But I don't think even he could have expected that something like this would have accelerated the timeline of people being influenced by him. Because he was becoming the inspiration to a lot of people by the time he was 20. He was seeing how a new generation of people could just pop up and become just like him, just like how he was like his inspirations. If I can assert myself real quick, I wouldn't be making this video if I wasn't as influenced by Schlatt as I am. Because throughout my timeline of watching Schlatt, the biggest question I had in my mind was constantly asking, how will he grow as a creator? I felt like a talent scout that was watching someone I knew was bound for greatness, and I wanted to be there for every step of the way. But at the same time, I was watching the Weekly Slap and seeing someone make these videos where they're just speaking what's on their mind with the combination of Call of Duty gameplay. I mean, this was addictive stuff to watch to me. Not just addictive to watch, but tempting to replicate. I would make my own, and to this day still make my own video game commentaries that no one watches simply because I watched a guy who did it and he felt satisfied making these videos, getting pressuring thoughts off of his chest. I feel as if I need a sense of direction. No, but I had thoughts I needed to get off my chest. Sometimes I wouldn't even put gameplay over these videos. I would film them with a camera, which just wraps around to being a vlog again. But at the same time, I wouldn't be making those videos if it weren't for Schlatt. I mean, this guy has such a strange duality, wanting to be the most entertaining YouTuber, but also wanting to be extremely sincere, things that are seemingly contradictory with each other, but he's doing it at the same time. What's that all about? I'm very observant of his ability to entertain, but the thing that makes me obsessed with him is his innate sense to be human on the exact platform he chooses to entertain. Now, I originally stated that I don't have a parasocial relationship with Schlatt. That was a lie. Now, I don't want to say I have a relationship per se with Schlatt, but I do expend a lot of emotional interest, energy, time to Schlatt without even realizing it. So, yeah, I do have a parasocial relationship with Schlatt. It's one-sided. I spend way more emotional energy towards him than he does to me. He doesn't know I exist. Honestly, I don't even want him to know I exist because of the embarrassing amount of time I have spent thinking about another man. I've accepted the fact that I just can't help it. I think about YouTube a lot. I study YouTube a lot, and Schlatt is a part of that YouTube that I study. It's even to the point I rewatch A Tribute to Minecraft, but the actual video itself is not this hyperbolic awakening to me because I didn't even know who Schlatt was when he uploaded it. I can only look at it with hindsight and with the context I do now in the context of Schlatt. But it didn't mean I wasn't inspired because I actually did want to make my own tribute in the style of what he did, but with my own twist, of course. But I wanted to do it with a game I associated with my childhood and growing up. It was an experience I cherished, going onto a website where your parents was scared of a living, breathing virus living on there that would explode the computer just to play this game I found on Thanksgiving Day called Bloons Tower Defense 3. I'm going to stop it right there because any attempt I have made towards this video has always ended horribly. Whether it be video corrupting, not recording at all, if I had to move, something has always gone one way or another when trying to make this video, so you know what? I'm not even going to bother trying to talk about it. But once 2020 comes around, the timeline of Schlatt gets hard to follow. After SMP Live dissolves, Schlatt stops streaming, but he doesn't stop existing. In fact, he becomes even more prominent. This is where the story of Jay Schlatt goes from being a channel to a full throttle towards his personality. Jay Schlatt is no longer a channel, it's the guy. I couldn't tell you every single encounter he appears on other people's channels, let alone live streams, but at least his own channel he showed some highlights on a Twitch game show that he was on called Lover Host. The premise was simple. It was a dating show where a bunch of potential dates would get into a video call with the love bird, eliminating each contestant one by one. But here's the catch, each contestant could choose between a love or a host. By that I mean they could either choose true love, you know, have a nice date with the streamer, or, you know, get a broadcast plug that could get them a lot of attention, or a host, that's what it's called on Twitch. Tonight's bachelorette was Alexandria Botez, a chess streamer that's just as smart as she is attractive, and she has a lot of lucky men in line having the chance to get to know her, including Esfand, Fedmeister, and Destiny. Just like the show goes, each contestant was getting eliminated one by one. Schlatt was still in, but he was playing it safe to say the least. But he was able to get through all the other guys, 10 men down to 2, and one of them was Schlatt. Alex didn't choose Schlatt, she chose Fedmeister, and a day after Schlatt uploaded his video of that lover host, Fedmeister was accused of sexual assault by other streamers. Ultimately, this was not a show to be taken seriously, and the love involved was not meant to be true love. If anything, this was another way to make connections and find new people to talk to, the prime example being Minx, who Schlatt had a chemistry with in particular. They made for entertaining streams, or at least stream highlights, down to the point of when Minx was the star, Schlatt went for the bit and chose host. Said he chose host and still won. And in case you're wondering, yes, Schlatt's Twitch channel was inactive, so the host was practically worthless. You can see a new era of Schlatt develop in real time, away from Minecraft and into guns that he used as his personality, smashing keyboards, had a whiteboard that he put funny things on, lit up some candles that smelled exactly like Gwyneth Paltrow's vagina. That's not a joke, that's actually what that is. Also, there was this thing that happened in 1999, but more specifically, when I say you could see a new era develop in real time, I mean he's developing these ugly, repulsive chops that are just like growing on the side of his face, and they just like, they get fuzzier and grosser, and it's just like, but jokes aside, these chops were a reaction to something larger happening not just to Schlatt, but on YouTube in general. This thing called stan culture. Huh. Here you go. Yeah. Yeah, I haven't been drinking tonight, but I wanted the prop anyways. So in the simplest way to put it, the internet was becoming more online. The internet was changing in a way that Schlatt's personality was garnering him more success than if he was just genuine like he was on the old channel. But it's been very clear since the face reveal, maybe even before that, he's been very antsy about people attaching themselves to him. But it's a different type of parasocial attachment where instead of feeling attached to someone, you genuinely feel something emotional between you and this person that doesn't know you. To put it simply, Schlatt didn't like being attractive in a way that it could be made into someone's profile picture with a bunch of heart emojis, or even worse, someone's fan fiction. But by growing these chops, these disgusting nasty chops, he was able to overcome the situation that he had with the face reveal. The chops made him look dumb, but he'd rather look dumb than have people stan him. He wants to be an entertainer, but he doesn't want to be a friend or even provide the slightest illusion of being a friend, because he's not. He doesn't know you, he never will. A great example of stan culture was this Minecraft YouTuber that was absolutely exploding at the time. You might have heard of him, you might have even dreamed of him. Oh my god! Now, someone can be more in depth about this. This video is about Schlatt and not Dream, but to put it simply, Dream had fans. Dream had very dedicated fans. There was no fan base that will latch onto what they love more than teenage girls, and that's what Dream's audience was. A very vocal part of Dream's audience were teenage girls that would go on Twitter and talk about what they liked all the time. They were the ones that would make the accounts based around entire people, and yeah, it was creepy. I'm scared of teenage girls. But before the ball really got rolling in stan culture, a few things happened. First, Dream made his own SMP, the Dream SMP, who would have guessed? At this rate, Schlatt himself was about to reach 900,000 subscribers, but that paled in comparison to Dream, who was a few months away from reaching 10 million subscribers. It's very interesting to see what is essentially polar opposites in their respective field of YouTube. Dream's brand consisted of nothing but Minecraft, but Schlatt was trying to push his image away from just playing Minecraft. Dream reciprocated the love of his fans, and Schlatt did everything he could to distance himself from his fans. Schlatt had a face, Dream was an embodiment. Schlatt was once again invited to another SMP by someone who looked up to him, none other than Tommy, and he was now the person people wanted to beat the Ender Dragon with, and it only took a year. This also showed another aspect about Schlatt that was really starting to escalate at this point. He was able to generate views outside of his channel. It's a weird thing where Schlatt was just as busy as every other channel, but it was on things that weren't his channel. The way Twitch exploded in 2020 is absolutely insane, to the point I think even Schlatt's Twitch channel actually more than doubled in follower count, even though he never streamed. Not only that, but his live channel was doing weekly uploads and things that barely had any relation to anything else he was doing. Likely better for his creativity and mental health. But it certainly wasn't any Minecraft, and this was the guy who brought it back, a king who didn't want the crown. But the Dream SMP was huge. They started doing this narrative that was kind of like watching a TV drama live, some sort of soap opera, and the kids couldn't get enough of it. At its peak, if you got every creator that was live streaming during one of these story arcs, the live view count accumulated to 1 million people watching all at once, and Schlatt was still not streaming. But it gave a pretty unique perspective. He played a tyrannical leader in the server, and because he didn't show his POV, it did make him all the more mysterious. Now, another thing that Schlatt had in opposition to Dream was their fan base. I guess you could say Schlatt had an edgier sense of humor. I haven't brought it up so far just because it's been that insignificant to my memory, but also just in retrospect. But for a period, there was a larger spike than usual around cancel culture and canceling people for some sense of justice. And my memory serves me better than actual archives, but I remember Dream's fan base absolutely hated Schlatt. Any phobia or ism, anything you could think of, this guy did it. And I remember he was making Jackbox videos around this time that emphasized a sense of humor that relied on shock value, but it doesn't really matter now. Really, this was the accumulation of like a few jokes that happened over the past few years. If you're not terminally online, there's this thing on Twitter called a trigger warning. Trigger warning is Twitter's version of a viewer discretion. So if someone died, you know, that's like a little heads up. But the funny thing is that people would put a trigger warning for people on the internet like Schlatt. I'm gonna be honest, Schlatt isn't even that edgy of a person. I guess he makes 9/11 jokes, but who doesn't? Like, even trying to find archives of people putting trigger warnings on these Schlatt tweets, all of these accounts are suspended. All of these people upset over this one guy are lost to time. You can't find archives of people being offended by him now. This one in particular says, trigger warning, eye contact. I mean, it's not like he hopped on an interview with Destiny and started talking about politics or anything. That part of his personality doesn't come out much. In fact, it doesn't come out at all. In fact, I don't think it's even a part of his personality. But at the time, this is an unprecedented social pressure that is even hard to comprehend now. So here's at least my interpretation of Jay Schlatt and cancel culture, because I'm not going to focus on this for too long. I got other things to talk about. So when someone actually gets canceled, it's usually within the context of doing something illegal or so immorally reprehensible that the person should no longer have a career or a platform. Case in point, Fedmeister. But the worst thing Schlatt has ever done was make jokes that might have aged poorly. Maybe he said a word he shouldn't have 3 years ago, but really there wasn't any heinous act that he committed. Basically, people were trying to judge his actual character off a character he puts up in his videos. He spent so much time working his way to get out of stan culture and having people be overly attached to him, only for Dream stans to be overly attached to him, except they want him gone. And once Jay Schlatt was gone, what would happen? I don't know. I really don't understand cancel culture to this day, so it's just like imaginary fairy tale magic, if we're being honest. Also, I should mention, all of this cancel culture stuff was just on Twitter. No one on YouTube cared, no one on Instagram cared, no one cared except for a small amount of people on Twitter, mostly white teenage girls. They scare me. I'm genuinely scared of them. And because it was just a small amount of people that were trying to deplatform him and they have absolutely no sway on the internet, he did the best thing anybody could do, which was nothing. And that's what he did. He just prioritized making a silly little tweet every once in a while instead of actually using the website, which is the healthiest way to use it aside from not using it at all. I don't know what it is about Twitter. I don't understand Twitter psychology. Every time I use it, it drives me up the fucking wall how like people will just, if somebody makes an annoying tweet, you find out they actually kicked a child in the head once and oh, you can use that as a quote retweet. I don't know. I guess there's this emotional high when social justice is served hot on a platter. And when it came to Schlatt, there were a bunch of people waiting at a table at a restaurant demanding that they had the Schlatt special, his head on a platter. But the longer they waited, the more restless they became. Even the smallest reciprocation of Schlatt would have been enough, but it never happened. And they were so set on ruining the career of this one guy who finally achieved his dreams. Like I said, cancel culture, it's pretty much imaginary. It doesn't really affect anything unless you actually murdered someone, which as far as I'm concerned, Schlatt didn't do. Ooh, 1999, ooh. You know what, that joke isn't funny to me. But really, when it comes to Schlatt, there's nothing to really talk about regarding cancel culture, so let's ask the real questions, like, who is Jack Manifold? This is an actual question I've been having for years now, like, where did he come from? His first video was with Tommy in it, and I'm 99% sure he was never introduced as a person around these people. He just started joining the Let's Plays, and they were just like, oh, it's Jack Manifold. Like, no, who is that? Where the fuck did he come from? I'm not upset, I'm just not convinced that he isn't a figment of my imagination. To me, he's like the Minecraft YouTuber equivalent of Graggle Simpson or Mr. Poopy Butthole. And I mean, he hasn't gone away either. He hasn't exactly like fizzled out like some other Minecraft YouTubers. October of 2020, Schlatt and friends revived the sleep-deprived podcast after going dead for a little there, and... do I say that it sucks? Well, I already did say it. Shit. There's nothing worse than a group of people trying way too hard to be funny to me. But there's the weekly slap. Yes, the vessel where Schlatt can still show a version of himself to people that doesn't show anywhere else. The episodes are few and far between, but it's always a welcome surprise to see another one show up. In fact, a new one just showed up on Christmas Day called Goodbye for Now. To put it simply, Schlatt had multiple reasons to give up the channel, and he felt it was time to move on from what the weekly slap was. YouTube was no longer a platform to talk about Schlatt's life as much as it was his life, but it also showed that there was another reason to not get too attached to his fans beyond the parasocial nature and fear of hurting them. By reading his inbox of all the emails he gets for his channel, there's a certain amount of energy you have to devote to each individual email. And when a bunch of people have problems, many of them are larger than others, and it's not that your problems aren't valid, but by being one person, there's absolutely no way to devote all the energy received for these emails. It's understandable, but even then I can't help but put my own grimy parasocial hands on this whole thing. It was implicative towards something broader, the end of an era. This was really that last relic of anything Schlatt was doing consistently for even the last year. But the fact that he still had something that existed before J Schlatt Live made it all the more special, so for that to be given up, it truly concluded a certain time in Schlatt's life. I mean, when it comes to his old channel, it makes sense why it's an archive. Every decision in a J Schlatt video was a calculated move that was forwarded by him. There was no outside influence, no other editors, no other nothing except the occasional creator being featured in a podcast or a video, but the point is that it wasn't outsourced. The same goes for the weekly slap. As far as I'm concerned, it's all him behind the computer making all of this. And quite frankly, if he wasn't editing his videos on the weekly slap, I think I would lose interest in the channel altogether. But with the retirement of the weekly slap, it emphasized this idea that J Schlatt was no longer a channel, it was a personality. Heck, it was even a brand. His face is a brand, his character is a brand. It's all part of a certain image that doesn't reflect who he was 2 years ago, and it was meant to not reflect that. The sentiment was gone. He is an entertainer and someone edits his videos for him. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but don't get it twisted. What he does now is not about Schlatt. He is doing a job, and anything to make it feel more like a job and not a personal liability is all he wants right now. In December of 2020, Schlatt joined a podcast called The Create Unknown, a podcast hosted by Kevin Leiber of Vsauce 2, if you still watch that channel, I mean. But this was also one of those videos where Schlatt was at his most candid, talking about things he felt genuine about, but at the same time, this was also one of the least viewed. Seriously, this was him, Schlatt After Hours, the dude that exists after the cameras shut off. But on this podcast, he mentioned a lot of things. He talked about cancel culture in one of the few moments where he actually acknowledged it. Basically, people that were trying to cancel him don't watch him. He might as well be imaginary to them. But he also mentioned that he was looking for a new house, not in New York, because people who do YouTube don't do YouTube in New York. In fact, he was looking at houses in a place called Austin, Texas. The year is 2021. 2020 was an absolute rush, and things are only gonna get crazier from here. The pandemic was finally going away, and eventually Schlatt would be able to...
What is up, Drama Alert Nation?
Well, I'm gonna stick to the facts here, which was that one day in March, he called me shortly before he told Travis. Everybody was up in LA, and he told most of them face to face, but he called me, and I picked up the phone, and he was basically like, I have to tell you something, and then he told me that he did underage girls, and I think that he said that they were fans, and that was what I was told.
Did he tell you how old they were?
Call Me Carson got into some drama. Specifically, an incident happened where he was texting someone who was a fan and they were sending explicit stuff to each other. Now, there are other things that go into play towards this situation that I don't really want to get into, someone else can, but the main thing I want to focus on is that Carson was using his platform to manipulate fans and use his power to get stuff he wants. If he wasn't talking to fans, it would probably still have been a controversy, but it would have been a different story. When this happened, any activity from any of Carson's channels stopped, and from what it looked like, his career died right there. Because he was a part of a group with Carson, Schlatt had his own interpretation of this controversy. One that I mostly parrot the opinion of because I trust Schlatt's experience. But in hindsight, the dissolution of Lunch Club makes a lot more sense than just a virus going around. Lunch Club had not only seemed to end with the pandemic, but it seemed like the actual group split apart rather abruptly. It was in a way that wasn't really questioned, but it makes a lot more sense now, especially after March of 2020. Schlatt's content didn't have a sharp turn, but you can see him gradually despise many of the identifiable aspects of his content, namely things that kind of grouped him with Carson in the first place. Now, I don't want to be an armchair therapist, but there's an interesting correlation that happened here. Now, what I mean by that is that he kind of started growing his chops around the same time the Carson situation happened. The dissolution of Lunch Club would initially had to come out to the members before being public at the dawn of 2021. In April of 2020, after Lunch Club dissolves behind the scenes, Schlatt starts developing the image of his facial hair. And I don't want to go into any theories or looking in places I shouldn't, but it would at least connect a few dots that aren't crazy to believe in. Take his video where he actually explains why he grew facial hair. He says that it's his journey of learning to not give a single shit about you. It goes into the discourse of parasocial relationships, but also his fear of what happens when that relationship between the audience and the creator becomes real. Because he hasn't just experienced what happens when that relationship becomes a legitimate thing, he's seen what happens to the mental health of those creators and the people affected by it. It's a dangerous line that, if crossed, it can destroy everything around you. So why even cross that line in the first place? In fact, why even get near that line? Because I'm not your friend, I'll never be your friend, and I don't want you to even consider that because you'll never know me like I know myself. This is a persona. I'm a normal person, but I'm here to entertain you, and if you think about entertaining others, then just give up while you're ahead, because if you're not a fluke, then once you're here, everyone is just going to try to tear you down. Or you're with someone that has been torn down, because remember, all of this can be taken away. To this day, any and all momentum for Carson has stopped. His channel being stunted at his sub count after such a meteoric rise was strange. It's strange to not hear his name after 3 years, or anything about him for that matter. His career isn't over, but it's peaked. Schlatt still wasn't as big as Carson at the time, but he was still growing compared to Carson, and eventually his relationship with Carson wouldn't define his career as much as it would be a footnote of the past. But you could still see the ripples of what they did together. In particular, from the ashes of Lunch Club, and a few months after the last Lunch Club upload would come a podcast called Chuckle Sandwich. This is an immensely popular podcast featuring the likes of former Lunch Club members Jay Schlatt, Ted Nivison, and Charlie of Slimesicle fame. Now, unfortunately, I didn't go through all of the podcast episodes. In fact, I haven't gone through a single one because honestly, after about 5 minutes, I get bored of it, and its energy is not my energy. February was arguably one of the busiest months for Schlatt. He was moving! Austin, Texas, baby! A lot of those connections he was making over the last year were in Austin anyways, and quite frankly, if his life is going to be YouTube, it's better to treat it like a business and to get rid of anything that could be personal about it in the first place. This is really what he needed. He was making videos in his childhood room, but this was finally a place he could go to where the environment was a work environment. He could treat work like work. It wasn't without its hiccups. Texas was in an unprecedented snowstorm that shut off any and all electricity in the area. People died and the governor wasn't even there to deal with any of it. But eventually Texas would get warmer and the light at the end of the tunnel for Schlatt to really hit the throttle on his career. Also, he just got a cat, Jambo. It's orange and it's the dumbest thing on the planet, but you know what? It got 11 million views on the video. Basically, yeah, things were looking promising for Schlatt and Austin seemed to be the right move. Now, regarding the timeline of 2021, I don't really have a great account between March and August, and I just don't care enough to detail this part of his life. I know he went to Los Angeles because he recorded a video with Ted Nivison, and also he was doing things in Chuckle Sandwich where he had to go to Los Angeles. He was also a part of game shows. There was one hosted by a guy named Ludwig, God only knows where that took place. Not only was he existing in more things outside of his channel than within, but also getting more views on videos not on his channel. Again, he was in Tommy Innit videos as a guiding mentor to this Brit. He was uploading a lot less than he did in New York, and his videos now were a lot more vague. In May, he joined media organization One True King, or OTK, which was an organization made by Asmongold, Esfon, Mizkif, Rich Campbell, and Tips Out. And these are streamers, I don't care about them, but hey, Schlatt's in this thing, I might as well look at him, which again was probably kind of the point. He's the YouTube influence towards this whole thing. Asmongold stated that OTK came up with this idea of making an organization and building the organization around our friends. Wow, a great opportunity for Schlatt to join an organization that was built around friendship. Okay, yeah, the last time wasn't all that great, but you know what? This is new, it's a lot more professional. I think this is going to work out this time. But while we wait for August 29th, 2021 to roll around, I wanted to talk about the, Schlatt stimulus. Schlatt is a very viewable guy, not just for himself, but for other people. There's multiple reasons as to why he's appealing to be featured on channels besides himself. During 2020, when he wasn't streaming, people wanted him to at least be streamed, and when he was, it made for an easy highlight. But his video output wasn't as consistent, and the only thing he was uploading were highlights anyways on a completely different channel, which that highlights channel was purely made for money, as quoted by Schlatt.
And thanks for watching the clips, because honestly, we started this channel to make some money, and that's what the fuck we've done.
But he was still demanded as a personality, so him being in other people's videos made for a huge boost. Maybe not purely for Schlatt, but Ludwig's video with Schlatt in the title got 7 million views. I mean, whatever this guy's doing, it seems to have a fucking Midas touch. Almost everything he touches can get 1 million views. He is a walking paycheck for a lot of people, including most of all, himself. But that's what happens when you're an entertaining personality. People want to see you be entertaining, and if you can't provide that on your own channel and you're providing it on other people, then people who have that channel are going to reap the benefits, and they happily will. It's not like Schlatt was struggling or anything. He has plenty of money, but I mean, it's just not his channel is what I'm saying. And it's also why it's hard to document this time frame, because he's just in so much stuff. Seriously, I can't keep track of all of it. He's in like 3 different circles and they're all doing different things. I completely forgot about Sleep Deprived. As 2021 went on, it actually proved to be a pretty shitty year for Schlatt. Maybe even the shittiest year he's ever had. He was uploading sparsely, existing pretty sparsely. And on August 25th, we see a video from his channel, Big Guy, called Schlatt's Old Room Tour. Between a library of clips of him being the funny guy, there's this 21-minute video of him being as sincere as possible, just going around his old room, the room that he used to do videos in, and it's my favorite thing he's ever recorded ever. Now, if I had the choice, I wish his grandma didn't die for this video to be made, but since she did, thanks Gam Gam. The thing with Schlatt moving to Austin, Texas was that the only thing he really brought along with him was himself. After all, he wanted to focus on the business, and Schlatt was the business. But going back home and making this video, you can really see someone that was basically able to go back to his life as it was was a year ago. Practically nothing in his room had changed, and he was able to revisit a certain period of his life as it was. What I really appreciate the most about this video though is the bittersweet feeling of seeing Schlatt gradually ignited throughout the video, reliving what was practically the last 10 years of his life of YouTube laying dormant. And when you feel lost in life, sometimes all you need to see is the path that you took to where you are now. He went around his room looking at things that would have otherwise been decorations had he just stayed in the room. Schlatt took the plunge and tried something that he was uncomfortable with, going to Austin. But now that he's back at this place of comfort, recording it for a YouTube video, he had to explain everything to his audience, and really it was just to remind himself of what he had in his room. Like how he didn't have a bed in his room anymore because he was sleeping in another room due to enjoying the division of work and life. There was a collection of maybe 10 games, and that basically told you more about Schlatt's personality than most of his videos. He didn't really play anything new. Every game in that collection was from the Xbox 360 or Wii U. I don't know, maybe you can't beat the classics after all. Even when opening a drawer filled with cables and headphones, he was able to see identity in what he had. These weren't just headphones, these were the headphones Sips had when he recorded gameplay videos, which he cited as an influence as far back as 2018 in his tribute to Minecraft video. He surprised himself with things he didn't expect to see, found some things that made him remember what he loved, and having the reflection of the play button shine in your face is an experience very few get to truly have. And it's something he wasn't able to have while in Austin because all of his play buttons were back home. Everything was back home. It seemed to remind him why he was a creator or why he loved creating or entertaining. Yeah, it made him a lot of money once he got big, but he just loved doing it. A childhood room is a pretty good indicator of someone's identity, and Schlatt's identity was a bunch of YouTube bits and pieces that were lying around. 4 days later, the weekly slap was up and running again. And even though it will probably never be weekly, it's just good to be back. Schlatt seemed pretty burnt out, and this was a nice rejuvenation to bring him back to his roots. He didn't do the weekly slap so he could cater to this parasocial craving that his fans had. He did the weekly slap for himself, and no one was going to take that away from him anymore, damn it. This period of showing his growth as a creator would continue. September 2nd, Schlatt uploaded a video on his main channel for the first time since June called "I've Been Thinking of Retiring." And yeah, that's what the video was about. He thought about leaving it all behind. Now, Schlatt moved to Austin for greener pastures, but truthfully, it was an absolute struggle in his first year of being there. He could not find a consistent place to live to save his life. The place he was renting was sold to someone else, so he had to leave. And aside from moving to Austin during the peak of a snowstorm, there was even more problems happening before him. His cat needed surgery because it ate a bunch of magnets, and that doesn't come cheap. Not to mention the whole grandma dying thing. When your life is that inconsistent and that pulled apart by the forces of nature, your thoughts about YouTube aren't about what you're going to make next. And if you're not able to keep making videos because of shit luck after shit luck, then that gives someone enough time to see your audience and grab them for their own gain, just like how Schlatt grabbed a bunch of people uncertain about the future of their childhood and united them through Minecraft. Maybe the kids watching J Schlatt right now could see a tribute to Among Us, click on it, and suddenly they become the fans of a new YouTuber that Schlatt was. Because all J Schlatt has been doing for the past year is just sitting down in front of a camera and just complaining. Just talking about anything he wants with... He gets 1 million views. I mean, just thinking about all the work he had to do just to get a fraction of the attention that he gets now. I mean, compared to the sleepless nights that created what he was making and building his entire personality along the way as this crazy figure, I mean, it's like after years of learning to ride a bike, suddenly the bike becomes electric and you don't need to pedal it anymore. As long as you just steer enough, you can pretty much do whatever you want. This is the dream that millions and millions and millions of people have, and here he is living it. Not just living it, but thriving without even having to try. Not to say he isn't trying, but does he really have to? But regardless, in his life, it seems that the worst of the storm he was in has passed, and he can start doing what he wants to do now. And he did retire one thing in his channel, which was the weekly slap, but he brought that back, and in his retirement video, he says it's the most important thing he's ever done. And really, this whole video seems to be Schlatt finding his importance as a creator. But But then the next thing that happens, at least to me, feels a little strange. To this day, it feels more like a quarter-life crisis, even more than anything else he's ever done. And honestly, this is probably the closest I'll get to actual criticism towards something he's done. So for context, Schlatt had a video idea. He wanted to visit the Czech Republic to see a statue of a monkey with really large balls. Massive things. And well, the video didn't go as planned. He couldn't get to the country, the airline screwed him over. That's another cancelled video, even though he already put a lot of money into this. But later down the line, he has a plan. There are statues that he could buy for roughly $200,000 in total. He must have gotten really attached to the original Monkey Balls video because he talks about it across multiple videos that he had to scrap this thing. It was an unfulfilled project that never got off of its feet. So buying these statues is the next best thing he could do. But the actual idea of buying Monkey Ball statues isn't the most entertaining idea for a video on its own merit, but it created this call to action. He releases a merch line begging people to buy shirts so he can fund this vanity project. The next video in this series is him showing the monkey balls that he did buy, waiting for his next purchases, especially the big one. The statue Schlatt wanted to visit in the Czech Republic was on sale, and off the top of my head, I think it was $600,000, and he needed your help to fund the purchase again. He just released another line of merch, and it was a bunch of plushies while supplies last. Anyways, as far as I'm concerned, that went nowhere. The last video in this series is him getting the last of the monkey statues he got, and that's it. That's the video. This series was just Schlatt asking for money to buy monkey statues. He got the money, he bought the monkey, and that's it. That's all there was to it. It's really confusing to me within the context of Schlatt, considering this was his return to YouTube, and it felt like someone who still didn't really know what they wanted to do as a creator. Even when you put this video as an idea on paper, it honestly doesn't sound that good at all. So Schlatt wants a statue. He releases a line of merch to buy the statue. It gets funded. He buys the statue. What does he do with it? He buys it. That's it. That's all there is. That big statue is probably going to be the grand finale where he buys it and puts it somewhere in the Amazon rainforest, but that idea was far too ambitious for him anyways. I mean, Schlatt made it work for what it was, but it's a very expensive joke that his fans paid for. And I mean, he still got a paycheck from this. He got a net profit from buying these monkey statues, so it wasn't really in vain for him. There wasn't really a joke that was at his expense here.
Because I made merchandise to fund the procurement of that statue, and it made more money than the statue cost. So it was a net profit.
True. I mean, he's basically a millionaire that owns art now, and art increases in value over time anyways. It's an asset. And I understand a part of Schlatt's persona is that he's a capitalist, but this is an actual thing that he did with real money. This isn't like SMP Live where he faked a cryptocurrency at Minecraft. And I understand that over time Schlatt's wealth has become a part of his personality. It's a joke of his that he has a lot of money and that everything he does on YouTube is for money now. A new channel being made, well, it's for the money. A new merch line, well, that's also for the money. The sponsorships, I mean, it goes without saying. And I'm not trying to put myself on a moral high ground here. If I was in Schlatt's position, I would be doing a lot more things for the money. And the money is real regardless of the character you're playing, so when you do something like this, I mean, the lines get a little blurred to me. This doesn't feel like it comes from the best place. I just don't think Schlatt knows what he wants to do at this point in his career right now, and this is all he can do is just make money. And one thing I learned from this series is that merch launches are a lot easier to organize than inspiration is to come by. And I understand, these are customers that paid for this thing, you told them exactly what was going to happen with this money. In fact, you were as transparent as possible about this whole thing. But to me, this whole series feels more like a justification rather than something that actually wanted to be done. I guess the best way to put it is that when you're selling merch, the audience isn't going to be 100% unimpressionable. Regardless of who you think is going to buy the merch, there are people that have a sense of urgency and they have to get this new merch before it goes dry. But in my opinion, making a video series centered around selling merchandise just isn't that entertaining for me, and it comes off strange. And this is probably the most criticism I'll give to Schlatt during his career. This just felt strange to me. And he's talked about it again, and he's talked about that he's made a net profit, and I guess it's under the character, but it's also real money still. But he would go on to make stuff that was a lot more fulfilling, not just towards him, but to the viewers as well. Or would they even watch it in the first place? Well, you'll have to find out in part 3. It's a to be continued again. You know how these things come in threes. Let me do the thing. I gotta get out of my chair again. Ooh.
I've been away from it all. I've been away from it all.